You are now listening to the mystery novel, Chasing a Ghost, The Strange Case of Detective John and the Moon Knight Killer, Chapter 1. Detective John Archibald stood before the rust-speckled mirror in his cramped apartment, taking a slow, deliberate breath as he studied his reflection. The left side of his face sagged, the corner of his mouth twisting downwards into a permanent scowl. His left eye drooped, ever watery and bloodshot. It was a constant source of discomfort. The once smooth skin is now marred by the consequences of facial palsy.
Damn it, I muttered under my breath, the words slurring slightly as they left my lips. The simple act of speaking had become a challenge, one that I struggled with every day. Come on, John, you've got this, I whispered to myself, summoning up the last bit of resolve left within me. It wasn't just my face. That was only the tip of the iceberg. The palsy affected my life profoundly, from eating to drinking, even to how people perceived me. But I couldn't let it control me. I wouldn't. As I prepared to leave for work, my mind wandered back to Frank Moretti, the great mob boss in the city of New York. It was a case that challenged the entire police force, yet a challenge no one took on except my partner, Detective Jason Hawthorne, and I. Due to legalities, that's a case I still haven't cracked open wide.
Hey, Archibald. Remember when you solved the Lucky Stars case?
Yes, how could I forget? I responded. The killer's fake voice echoed in my memory.
See, John, you and me, we are just alike. We're cut from the same fabric, but you'll still never solve my mystery. Ha 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 ha.
My reputation as a skilled detective soared after that. The murderer had left cryptic messages written in blood on the back of each victim's naked body, taunting us with his twisted cat and mouse game. When others were stumped, I saw the patterns, the hidden meaning behind each carefully chosen word and symbol. It was like pieces of a puzzle falling into place, until finally, we had him cornered. There was nothing that could get in my way, except Frank Moretti's sorry ass. I allowed myself a small smile, thinking back to the praise I received. The satisfaction of knowing I had put a dangerous criminal behind bars was unmatched. It made the daily struggle with my facial palsy worthwhile. This was my contribution to the world, my way of proving that I was more than my appearance. My disfigured face stared back at me in the mirror, the left side tugging down as if pulled by an invisible force. The facial palsy I wish I was never given made even simple tasks like eating or speaking a challenge. But it also fueled my determination to prove myself as one of New York City's finest detectives. Years passed since then, 10 years to be exact. As I arise from the ashes, that's what I described as my bed. I muttered, my words slightly slurred. Time to get back to work. Stepping out onto the streets of New York, I surveyed the bustling city around me. The clamor of taxi horns and sirens mixed with the chatter of pedestrians hustling along the crowded sidewalks. The towering skyscrapers cast long shadows over the grimy streets, where shady deals were struck in dark alleys and mobsters ruled with an iron fist.
John.
A familiar voice called out from the crowd, pulling me from my thoughts. I turned to see David Hawthorne, my former partner and once loyal friend, approaching with a strained smile. David? I nodded tersely, feeling the sting of our severed partnership. We had shared countless successful cases and late nights at the precinct, but everything changed after the transit bomber case.
I repeat, the transit bomber on the loose. He has just blew up the Matt subway in Manhattan.
I thought I might run into you here.
Busy, I replied, my jaw clenching at the unspoken tension between us. You know how it is, crime never sleeps in this city.
Neither do you, it seems.
He quipped, trying to lighten the mood. But I could see the regret in his eyes, the longing for what we once had.
Look, John, I just wanted to say I'm sorry about how things ended between us.
Save it, David. I cut him off, unwilling to revisit the painful memories. The past is the past. We've both moved on.
Have we?
He questioned softly, his gaze searching mine for understanding. Damn it, David, I snapped, anger boiling within me. Why are you here? What do you want from me?
John.
David's voice trailed off, and for a moment, I saw the man I'd once trusted with my life. The man who had stood by me when others turned away. who saw past my inexperience and believed in my abilities as a detective. Fine, I sighed, my anger dissipating. Let's go grab a cup of coffee and catch up, but don't expect everything to just go back to how it was.
Of course not.
He agreed, relief washing over his face. But maybe we can find some common ground again. As we walked together through the unforgiving city, I knew that despite our differences, the bond we shared as detectives in this crime-ridden metropolis would never truly be broken. And though the mob boss continued to cast his dark shadow over New York, I was determined to bring him down with or without David by my side.
The rain fell in sheets, drenching the streets of New York City as Detective John navigated his way through the maze of alleyways and back streets. The city's dark underbelly seemed to rise up around him, its sinister energy seeping into his bones. But he was far from intimidated. This was his territory. He thrived in the chaos.
Hey, Detective Archibald.
A voice called out, breaking me from my thoughts. I turned to see Benny, the local newsstand owner, waving at me from under his umbrella.
Got a fresh batch of crime novels for you?
Thanks, Benny, I said with a nod, making my way over to him. But first, any gossip worth knowing?
You know how it is, same old,
He replied, his eyes twinkling.
Although word on the street is that you're getting closer to taking down the mob boss.
Is that so? I asked, one eyebrow raised.
Yep, everyone's talking about it. They say if anyone can do it, it's you.
Appreciate the vote of confidence, I replied with a wry smile. I'll be sure not to let them down.
Never doubted you for a second, Detective.
Benny said, handing me a stack of novels.
You've always been the best.
Thanks, Benny, but you don't have to be the best at something. You just have to be the most determined, I replied, tucking the books under my arm and continuing on my way. It felt good to know that despite my physical deformity, my reputation as a detective remained intact.
Detective Archibald.
A woman's voice called out to me as I approached my usual diner. I turned to find Maria, the owner, standing in the doorway, her apron stained with grease.
Your usual table is waiting for you.
Thanks, Maria, I said, stepping into the warm embrace of the diner's interior. The familiar sense of coffee and frying bacon filled my nostrils, and I felt a pang of nostalgia for the simpler days when David and I would spend hours here discussing our cases.
Everyone's talking about your latest case.
Maria said as she poured me a cup of coffee.
If anyone can bring that mob boss to his knees, it's you, John.
Thanks for believing in me, I replied, taking a sip of the strong brew. I won't let this city down.
I never thought you would,
Maria said with a smile before heading back to the kitchen. As I stepped out of the diner into the rain-soaked streets, the chill air nipping at my exposed skin. As I pulled my coat's collar tight around my neck, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in a store window. The sight of my twisted face never ceased to catch me off guard, my right eye drooping, my mouth permanently contorted into a sneer. I shook my head and forced myself to look away.
John Archibald! Hey, John!
A voice called out from behind me. I turned to see Officer Mike Daniels jogging toward me, his uniform drenched from the downpour. Hey, Mike, I responded, adjusting the brim of my hat to shield my eyes from the rain. What can I do for you?
Got some new intel on the mob boss. Looks like he's been laundering money through a string of businesses downtown, and he's using some of the trucks to pass cocaine through the streets of Brooklyn.
Mike said, panting slightly from his run. He handed me a folder filled with documents. Good work, Mike, I said, leafing through the papers as the rain threatened to soak them. My fingers fumbled clumsily due to the limited mobility on my right side. I'd learned to adapt, though. My left hand had become a reliable ally in compensating for my weaker side. It was just another challenge I'd overcome in my career.
Thanks, John. You're the best detective we've got. If anyone can nail this guy, it's you.
Mike flashed a smile, clapping me on the back before heading back in the direction he came. Appreciate it, Mike, I muttered under my breath, watching him disappear into the rain. I tucked the folder under my arm and started walking toward my apartment. As I trudged through the puddled streets, I couldn't help but replay the conversations I'd had over the years with women who'd recoiled at my appearance. My heart ached, remembering the sting of rejection. Is it wrong to want someone who sees past the scars and recognizes me for who I am? I thought, feeling a pang of loneliness in my chest.
Hey, watch it, you fucking asshole!
A pedestrian shouted as I nearly bumped into him riding his bike, lost in my thoughts. I made an apology and continued on my way. Sorry, shitface! focus, Archibald, I chastised myself. You've got work to do. You can't afford to get distracted by personal matters. As I reached my apartment building, I paused for a moment, steeling myself for the task ahead. The rain dripped from the brim of my hat, mirroring the resolve that flowed through me. With the new intel in hand, I was one step closer to bringing down the mob boss, and proving to myself that I could overcome any obstacle, regardless of the challenges my appearance or physical limitations presented. Let's do this, I whispered before stepping inside, ready to face whatever lay ahead. I hung my damp coat on the rack and closed the door behind me, the warmth of my apartment a welcome change from the cold rain outside.
John, relax. It's just me.
David's voice echoed from the kitchen. He was sitting at my worn wooden table, nursing a steaming mug of coffee. My former partner always seemed to find his way into my home, as if he had some sixth sense for when I needed company, or maybe just a stiff drink. Was this his way of doing his part to keep me alive because of my depression with palsy? Or did he feel guilty? "Hey, Dave," I said, trying to keep the weariness from my voice.
Couldn't sleep.
He replied, dark circles under his eyes betraying his lack of rest.
Thought I'd come over and see how you were holding up.
Same old, same old. I shrugged, grabbing a beer from the fridge. Still chasing leads, still hitting dead ends.
Any progress with the mob boss?
Maybe, I answered, taking a sip of the cold brew. Got a lead on one of his hideouts, but it's risky.
Sounds like every case we've ever worked on.
David chuckled, then grew somber.
You know I'd be there with you if I could, John. But with Sarah expecting it, I just can't risk it.
Expecting, I replied, clenching my jaw to hide the hurt. I missed having David by my side, but I couldn't fault him for putting his new family first. It was just another reminder of the life I didn't have.
Anyway, Sarah says hi.
David continued.
I brought you something.
He held out a small velvet pouch.
Found it in an antique store and thought of you.
I opened the pouch, revealing a vintage pocket watch. It was engraved with the image of a phoenix, wings outstretched, rising from the ashes. A symbol of rebirth, of triumph over adversity. Thanks, Dave, I muttered, touched by the gesture. It's perfect.
Figured you could use a reminder that you're stronger than you think,
he said, clapping me on the back. Damn right, I agreed, my resolve solidifying. I'll take down this mob boss, with or without your help.
Here's to that.
David raised his coffee mug in a toast, and I clinked my beer against it. As he left my apartment, I couldn't help but feel a sense of loss. We'd been through thick and thin together, and now our paths were diverging. Sarah pregnant. What a lucky man. The loneliness settled in like an unwelcome cloud, but I shook it off, focusing on the task at hand. In the quiet solitude of my home, surrounded by walls adorned with photographs and mementos from past cases, I began to strategize my next move. I knew I had to be cautious, precise. Any misstep could cost me everything. Time to rise from the ashes, I whispered to myself, winding the pocket watch and placing it on the mantel. The tick-tock of its gears filled the room, a constant reminder of the support I once had and the determination I still carried within me. Now, more than ever, I was prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead, alone if necessary. With the memory of David's unwavering friendship and the weight of the Phoenix-engraved watch in my pocket, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The mob boss doesn't stand a chance, I thought, cracking my knuckles and diving into the case files laid out before me. Not against John Archibald, master detective, survivor, and fighter. Damn, I could use a drink, I muttered under my breath as I closed the last case file. My eyes burned from hours of poring over reports, photographs, and witness statements. The anticipation of the upcoming investigation weighed heavily on me.
John, meet me at the Velvet Lounge tonight. We need to talk.
David's voicemail read. A knot formed in my stomach. Was he having second thoughts about our partnership? Or was this about something else? Fine, 10 p.m. I replied in a text, feeling both dread and curiosity. The Velvet Lounge was one of those seedy strip clubs I frequented when I needed a distraction from the harsh reality of my life. It wasn't the most glamorous of locations, but it served its purpose. As I entered the Velvet Lounge, the dimly lit room was filled with the scent of cheap perfume and the sound of raucous laughter. I caught sight of David sitting at the bar, nursing a whiskey on the rocks that he never touched. He looked up and grimaced as he saw me approach.
John, we've got a problem.
David leaned in closer, his voice barely audible above the thumping bass.
The mob boss, Vincent Moretti, knows you come here often. He's planning something. A setup.
My heart raced, and my mind churned through possible scenarios. They all ended with me being exposed, vulnerable, or worse. What kind of setup? I asked, trying to keep the concern out of my voice.
Word is he's getting one of the...
My mind trailed off, but the implication was clear. Shit, I muttered, scanning the room for any potential threats. A beautiful blonde dancer caught my eye. It was a wig, but I could care less. She seemed to be watching me intently, and something about her gaze sent a shiver down my spine.
Be careful, John. We need to find a way to turn this around on Moretti.
David's voice was firm, and I could see the determination in his eyes. Despite our recent falling out, it seemed we were destined to be partners once more, at least for this investigation. All right, I nodded, taking a deep breath. But first, we need to figure out who the mole is. My eyes locked onto the blonde dancer again, and I felt a strange mixture of excitement and dread. This was just the beginning, and only time would tell if we could outsmart Moretti and bring him down. Let the games begin, I murmured, raising my glass in a silent toast to the dangerous dance that lay ahead.
As John sat there, chugging his beer and watching the rain pour down outside, he couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of determination. He had a reputation to uphold, and he'd be damned if he let the mob boss continue to wreak havoc on his city. No matter what obstacles stood in his way, from his facial palsy to fractured friendships, he was ready to face them head on and prove that he was indeed one of the greatest detectives New York City had ever seen. If you have enjoyed this snippet of Chasing a Ghost, please like, share, and subscribe, and go to our Kickstarter page with the link in the description and become a backer for amazing rewards.